Hello and welcome to this short presentation for L6m4 ESG Principles. This is the theme for your Future Strategic Challenges exam in March 24. And this particular presentation is one of four that we ran for a full revision session just over a week ago. These are available to purchase from our website at cipsyorkstudy.com. And this is an abbreviated version of the full presentation on the theme. So I hope you find this useful for your exams, and we will make a start. So environmental, social and governance principles is the theme for the March exam. Where did the term come from? Well, it's a fairly recent development. The term was initially coined in 2004, and you can see a timeline there from the 1800s, where we first had industrial philanthropy, and in 1953, CSR term, 1987, social development, and 1994, the triple bottom line, which was coined by John Elkington, the founder of the British consultancy called Sustainability. So it's a relatively new term. It was first mentioned in the United Nations report, Who Cares Wins? And that's considered the first mainstream mention of ESG. So that's a very brief history of the development of the term. It doesn't mean triple bottom line and CSR terms have been replaced. It is just a further development. ESG, E, of course, is to do with the environment. S is the social. How does the company treat employees and the community? And G is governance. How is the company being run? What are its policies and procedures? There are many definitions. You will need one for your exam. You'll need to reference it. You can research your own, but I've put two or three together here, and I'll just look at the first one from CIPS. It stands for Environmental, Social and Governance, which is a measurable sustainability assessment, similar to CSR, but more measurable. Gartner suggests it's a collection of corporate performance evaluation criteria that assess the robustness of a company's governance mechanisms and its ability to effectively manage environmental and social impacts. And then there's another definition there from the CFI. So a quantifiable assessment of sustainability and business practices. That's from Ben Lukovic at Tech Target. So what are the key words? Measurable, similar to CSR. It's a framework. It takes an holistic view. Sustainability extends beyond environmental issues, and a quantifiable assessment of sustainability and business practices. And to expand on that, what do we actually mean by principles relating to ESG? So what do we mean by this term? Well, ESG principles and activities refer to, principles and activities which can impact on people or the wider natural environment, in addition to governance that determines organisation values and behaviours. And within supply chains, companies will need to consider not only their own ESG policies, but those of the wider supply chain. So this extends not only to immediate suppliers, but through subsequent tiers all the way down to the primary sector suppliers. So organisations will need to consider ESG values of key stakeholders, customers, shareholders, whose expectations will drive and shape policies. So the principles refer to a company's practices in regard to ESG. It isn't just about measurement, it is about your activities and practices, as we can see from this here, from Forbes 2023. It summarises your commitment to ESG. So it isn't just what are in the areas, and it isn't just about measuring them, it's much more than that. And there are many practices we can see here relating to ESG: bribery, corruption, fraud, collusion, modern slavery, EDI, human rights, etc. So they're the broad principles. Specific initiatives relating to ESG could include net zero targets, quality, diversity, inclusion, sustainable procurement, circular procurement, sustainability strategy, social value, supply diversity programs, and responsible ethical sourcing. So all these initiatives relate to ESG. Some are focused on E, some are focused on the full range. So how do ESG, CSR, and sustainability overlap? Sustainability is the umbrella term that both ESG and CSR fall under and contribute to. So ESG and CSR are both ways businesses can demonstrate their commitment to sustainable business practices. Sustainability and ESG are initiatives that have become imperative in business. And the main difference between these two frameworks for business is ESG is a measured assessment of sustainability. So it measures your impact contribution to sustainability. So there are key differences there summarised on that slide, which I've just articulated. Net zero, of course, is related to ESG, and it's related to the big E. Net zero plays an important role in ESG reporting. The E in ESG focuses on environmental. So there's a link there to net zero. And here's a slide that sort of summarises some of the terms. We've got sustainability here, which from your previous studies, you'll know is often associated with the 3 Ps, people, planet, and profit. And if we get all 3 correct, we might get sustainability. So it's not just looking at a firm's performance, it is looking at the environmental and social aspects as well. So we can see there net zero contributes to E, quality diversity contribute to S&G, and CSR and ESG fall under sustainability. And within CSR and ESG, we've got sustainable procurement, responsible sourcing, and circular procurement. More terminology. Sustainable procurement is the process of integrating ESG goals into procurement. Sustainability is a strategic direction that goes beyond legislation or economics, and it considers the important stakeholder expectations. So stakeholders are a very key driver. So summary of ESG, application of CSR, it's measurable. It provides PSM with ways to organise and articulate projects. And the drivers are many, from regulations to the business imperative, a business case, to key metrics that are now standardised so you can report on your performance. A broader range of issues, a demand for transparency. 90% of S&P companies now publish ESG reports. There are increased legislation, which is driving ESG. It's better for risk management. And there are many others, competition, cost, customer, leadership. So there's a summary there of a wide range of drivers there. This is of sustainable procurement, which of course is really ESG. There's a lot of regulation, and the full presentation goes into the regulation in much more detail. But the Companies Act now requires big companies to report energy usage and carbon emissions. There's the social sustainability disclosure requirements, which big companies now have to adhere to. And there are many impending legislation that's driving ESG. Some of the regulation that's already in place, which wasn't specifically put in for ESG, but relates to ESG, Health and Safety Act, Social Value Act, Modern Slavery Act, Equality Act. In America, we've got the California Transparency and Supply Chain Act and the URGA Forced Labor Prevention Act. There are many international treaties, agreements that are driving sustainability and ESG. There's the United Nations framework, there's the Paris Agreement, Stockholm Conventions, Montreal Conventions. We've got the UN Sustainable Development Goals, of which there are 17. And some of these relate directly to ESG. So we've got a slide here showing you 3, 4, 5 social development goals and how they can be achieved through ESG practices. So the agenda is being driven by stakeholders, by regulation, by goals from the UN. The UN also publish a global compact, which is a more practical way business can apply ethical principles when they're sourcing. And it covers 4 big areas: human rights, labour standards, environment, and anti-corruption. So there's the UN Global Compact and many other regulations. ISO 2400, Sustainable Procurement, ISO 26000, Social Responsibility. However, these are guidance standards and do not, companies cannot be certified against them. ISO 14001, which is a very important standard of which your suppliers can be certified against. On environmental management, we've mentioned the SDGs briefly. There's global reporting initiatives trying to standardize reporting, and as you can see, many other guidelines and drivers. So key supplier questions. How does it impact on procurement? So what environmental standards does your supplier have? Have they got a recognised EMS system? How do they manage energy, waste, water usage? Social standards. What's their policy? Do they comply with the UN Global Compact? Have they got fair trade practices? What's their health and safety record? And governance, what policies have they got on anti-bribery, corruption? Do they comply with industry regulation and standards? Have they ever been prosecuted before or fined for infringement? So a very broad area of questions that you need to ask suppliers when you're selecting and sourcing. There are many graphics like this that show the actual areas of ESG in more detail. So we've got under environmental here, we'd be looking at biodiversity, climate change, pollution, water security, etc. Governance, risk management, corporate governance, corruption, and supply chain, some broad issues. So there's many graphics like this. I've put 2 or 3 into a table here of specific what we'd be looking at when we look at a supplier. Well, environmental, have they got ISO 14001? Have they got greenhouse gas reduction measurements? Have they got good water management? Social, and the health and safety, have they got certified systems? And governance, what are their policies on ethics, CSR, etc.? Now that's from Interroller. There's another one there from CIVO, which gives you some possible targets or ESG goals in each of the areas. And similar there, CIVO gives some specific KPIs that are related to E, S, and the G there. And there's some good examples there. More general, you might award 30% of contracts to diverse suppliers, increase senior management diversity, raise wages to the real living wage by 2024, we'd probably change that, give 100% of employees unconscious bias training, allocate, etc. That's a really good suggestion from Indeed.com of ESG goals that might be implemented. And there are many benefits: improving bottom line. Research shows that people with good ESG perform better than those that don't. It avoids problems on regulation. It improves your reputation and less waste. So there's pages and pages of benefits you can cite. This one's from Procurement 101, cost savings, risk management, stakeholder relationships improved. And yet another one there, similar benefits. Benefits of ESG, again, very similar, but some evidence. You need to cite evidence. Top ESG performers enjoy faster growth and higher valuations than other players in their sector by 10 to 20%. And that's key research from McKinsey. ESG drive down costs by 5 to 10%. ESG reduces transition risk by helping companies be ready for regulation changes. So we need to cite research when you're talking about benefits. General benefits, policy examples, lower risk, cost reduction, better reputation, alignment of conduct and values. So that's quite a useful list there from CIPS. Benefits, very similar to the ones we had earlier there. Bottom line increase, we've got the same survey. Less risk, protects reputation. But how do we implement it? This is the key. It's all right saying what it is, but how does it affect procurement? Well, we need to relate to what our company's ambitions are. We don't just set our own. So convert your ESG-related company ambitions into procurement objectives. Establish a baseline, revisit category strategies, engage with your suppliers, set goals, team up with partners, champion change, accelerate change, reinvent monitoring, embed sustainability, upskill, and embed data. Big list that from Oliver Wyman, but I'm going to give some more detailed explanation in their report. Very similar. There's one here from Uberloo. First step is to assess your current practices, identify areas for improvement, set goals, communicate them to your suppliers, implement a framework, monitor progress. So that's quite good, quite straightforward. And a similar one there from Jep. Define your strategy, set targets, etc. So plenty of advice how to implement it, more there. Take your pick. Another one there from Avenir. But what do we need? We need leadership commitment, stakeholder engagement. We need to set procurement policies. We need to evaluate suppliers' ESG. We need to look at the performance ongoing, perhaps provide training, and we need to report and communicate ESG progress. EcoVadis may be able to help. There's quite a few of the big organisations use them, their supplier ratings. So it may be worth familiarising yourself with the work of companies such as EcoVadis and Senex. There are frameworks, but no universal standard on reporting ESG performance. The GRI is quite popular, but it relates to your organisation, really, not to your procurement. And they're trying to standardise reporting. Materiality basically means what is important to your organisation. What's important to your company is not necessarily what's important to another one. And companies have always had to report financial materiality, but now ESG is considered as important. Companies now need to report on key ESG risks that would impact performance. And we get this concept of double materiality. It's an extension of an accounting concept of the materiality of financial information. Information on a company that is material should therefore be disclosed if a reasonable person would consider it important. Thanks to the work of the TCFD, it is now widely accepted within financial markets that climate-related impacts on a company can be material and therefore need to be disclosed because they can affect your performance. So have a look at that double materiality and get your head around that. All the companies publish their materiality assessments, and there's one here from Coca-Cola. You can look at Nike, you can look at Tesco, you can look at any of the big companies, and in their reports will be what they consider the main issues to them, and that forms their basis of their ESG strategy development and priorities. So ESG and procurement have a major role to implement ESG and drive the ESG agenda. Priorities, the CIPS L6m4 report suggests in the private sector, 8% see that as a top issue, whereas in the charity sector, 14%. However, building supply chain resilience can be improved through good ESG practices. Stakeholder management is essential to develop ESG. So these are interrelated and can be linked to ESG in themselves. So have a look at the CIPS L6m4 annual report and see what they say about ESG. So procurement need to report, carry out due diligence with suppliers, sustainable source, and perhaps build capacity with suppliers to help them develop ESG improvements. So using sustainable materials, reducing waste, promoting fair labour practices, etc. All things that procurement can be developing. And there's a broader list of practices which are vast and varied. Removing waste, amending specifications, developing whistleblowing procedures, etc. Exam guidance. You need to provide examples. These can relate to net zero strategies, circular procurement, sustainable procurement, etc. And the examples must be related to the question area, such as skills, challenges, use of technology, and or the impact on the procurement function / profession. Summary: sustainable procurement involves integrating ESG strategy into procurement processes. ESG refers to ESG factors when making purchasing decisions, and it's essential to reduce risk, and procurement are going to play a crucial role in sustainability by promoting resource efficiency, sustainable product adaptation, etc. And final thoughts: ESG is a top priority now. Businesses face many risks, including ESG risks. Sorry about that. And ESG in procurement refers to consideration of ESG. Questions? If you look at our website, cipsyorkstudy.com, there are a wealth of information on other modules, and we sell exam questions, we sell revision guides, and importantly, we sell a recording of the full webinar and revision notes for only £15. So have a look at the website, have a look at our options, and we'll go from there. So I hope you've found this informative. It's only a quick overview, but it gives you hopefully a much better understanding of what ESG is and how you might try and relate that in your exam to the questions. The full webinar includes exam technique, discussion of specific ESG research, and many examples of ESG practices that could be used in your exam. So I hope this has been helpful. Thank you. And let's close off on that.